tonight?
Tonight.
Yeah, I mean, the big problem is, when you talk about the revenue for any show, is the lack of gate. I mean, tonight we were blessed to have 12,000 people here. It was so nice, wasn't it? It just felt like it was my first ever show I went to as a kid. But we already had a deal in place for Billy Joe Saunders to fight Canelo Alvarez in May, and you know, he's tweeted tonight he wants the shot. You know, Canelo walked past me and said, "That's 3. Who's next?" Because we've tried with Rocky Fielding, Daniel Jacobs, and now Callum Smith, and we got 2 more, Billy Joe Saunders and Gennady Golovkin, that obviously are great fights. I think he loves the belts. He loves to face the champions. In fact, I think that's all he wants to do. You know, he wants to keep setting goals, winning belts, and I guess you'll hear from him soon.
But you know, he fights generally in May and September. So are we looking at like a May or even sooner?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know their schedule. I know that they want to fight regularly. You know, there was talks about him even fighting in Mexico in February, at the end of February, and you know, getting the Yildirim fight out of the way, and then boxing in May, and then September, and I think he said December, but he's obviously quite pumped at the moment, and the adrenaline's rushing. Tomorrow he might wake up and think, I ain't fighting in February.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think now my job is to keep him on the zone, try and map out a schedule for him, and obviously the front 2 guys of his choice, I believe, are Billy Joe and Triple G.
So Eddie, you know, you said that your job is to keep him on the zone. What do you think is the main ingredient that you need to keep him here?
I would think that one of the big words is trust, and I would like to think that after the relationship of only 5 weeks and the ease of the show that he's experienced this week and the work of our team, that he's very comfortable with what we've delivered. You know, money is probably, no, money before trust, maybe. No. Close. I just think, I know he wants to make money, but I can only tell you what I've experienced from him and Eddie Reynoso over the last 5 or 6 weeks, which is a desire to create legacy and take challenges. Obviously, commercially, they want to be respected for that. But at the end of the day, I think they like a plan. You know, they want something mapped out. They want to see it and picture what the next moves are. And the next move is not just sometimes one fight. It's saying to me, okay, how does my 2021 look? And you know, if they wanted a plan for that, we could come up with a plan and you know, move forward with that.
One thing that really stood out to me is, obviously, you know, Canelo's the biggest star in the sport, and for even what his last 10 fights, maybe more, we've never seen this kind of atmosphere. The entrance, he had a Mexican mariachi band doing the final countdown. We had fireworks. Was that, how big is that?
Well, you can ask him when he comes. I mean, I just went to his change room, and it's the first thing he said to me. You know, the entrance, man, can't believe it. You know, and they were all looking at pictures, and that was quite low key for us. To be honest with you. I mean, that's something that we thrive on. There's something that we've obviously developed over the years with Anthony Joshua. It's part of the show, you know, and he clearly loved it. And I think sometimes, even small things like, you know, we put out a post where I was just joking with him about his pajamas, right? And we conversed in English. And you could see people saying, wow, oh, Canelo's talking English then, and people don't really realise he understands perfect English. You know, he does, but I think it's the confidence to speak it which is the difference. But he's a very likeable, cheeky, funny individual, and when you're promoting someone, you have to showcase their personality and their flamboyancy, and that's what that ring walk done. That ring walk said superstar, and that's what Canelo Alvarez is. So, you know, we were pleased with that, and I hope he enjoyed it. I think he did.
Eddie, how surprised were you that?
Sorry.
Can you tell us about the transition after he separated from Golden Boy? You guys taken over. What was the process as far as, you know, obviously his training was, you know, quite rushed, but on the business side, how I mean, walk us through that process.
Well, I think obviously when the announcement was made about the separation, it was kind of all guns blazing from the industry. You know, I guess PBC, Top Rank, us, everybody made their approach. I've been lucky enough to work with Eddie Reynoso and Julio Cesar Martinez, So I had a good relationship with them. I guess probably because of the history, the odds were stacked more against us because we were the broadcaster that essentially just ended a relationship with. They liked the plan, the money was important as well, and they liked the fight with Callum Smith, and it all progressed from there, you know. And touch wood, although like I said, I was funking for our guy tonight, it's been faultless, you know. They've quite surprised me about the simplicity of the team in terms of ego, and you know, like this week we've had UK media who some are here who he's been giving time to, and I know it's a bubble, so obviously we're condensed in that respect, but I think he's enjoyed it, you know. I think essentially he's my boss, you know. If we work together, he is my boss, I work for him. It's the same as Anthony Joshua. You get to make your own moves, you get to make your own decisions, you get to do what you want to do, you know. But our job is to strategize, but you are the boss, and I think maybe that's something that he hasn't had before, or hasn't had that feeling before. He calls the shots, you know, and ultimately we will service him. We will help him in every department he needs to be helped in, and we will commercialise, you know, the brand of Canelo Alvarez in a different kind of way, which is and should be global, because I don't think, if you look at the draw of Anthony Joshua isn't a huge star in America yet, but Canelo Alvarez is a huge star in America, but maybe he doesn't have the global presence of Anthony Joshua yet, and that's because we've worked very hard on that over the last 5 or 6 years with some major commercial partners that have really, you know, helped his brand grow globally, and that would be the plan with Canelo Alvarez. I'd love to see him fight in London, I'd love to see him fight in Tokyo, I'd love to see him fight in the Middle East. You know, that's the sign of a true global star. But, you know, hands down, there is no bigger draw in boxing in America than Canelo Alvarez. You know, we've seen it from the numbers from DAZN tonight in America and on their new global product. You know, he's a huge draw, particularly in America, and it was a big win for them tonight to bounce back from the pandemic and regain a lot of those subscribers that weren't able to watch boxing when it was dark, essentially.
Does it make you nervous when you say, you know, he essentially is my boss? Do you think he could potentially turn into like a LeBron James?
Yeah, that would be the plan of any promotional company. I think we're a little bit different. We understand how to grow a fighter or a sports star's brand, and that's what Canelo Alvarez is, and something as simple as the walk-off. It's just iconic pictures and images that go worldwide, and people look at it and go, wow, who's this guy? You know, we've been doing it with AJ for years. He walks out in front of 90,000 at Wembley with, you know, the flaming AJ and the fireworks going off. I mean, the fireworks scared me tonight. I think they scared Canelo as well, but those images are important, and he's the poster boy of boxing, really. You know, AJ and him, for me, the two global poster guys of boxing. So that's all part of the show.
Eddie, how surprised were you that he beat Callum as convincingly and as easily as he did?
I'm surprised, and it just goes to show you how good he is, you know, and the levels of Canelo Alvarez. I mean, we're all boxing fans here, and so is Callum Smith, and so is Paul Smith and Stephen Smith and Liam Smith. And the amazing thing about both guys is when I went into Callum Smith's changing room, they were talking about the fight and the attributes of Canelo Alvarez and the tactics, and you know. And then when I went into Canelo Alvarez's changing room, him and Eddie Reynoso were going through the fight. You know, they were almost throwing punches, saying, "Yeah, I did this," and Callum said, "Yeah, he did this well." You know, and there is so much respect between fighters to Canelo Alvarez. You only have to look on the internet, and every fighter is saying he is the best. He is pound for pound #1. I think that his movement, his jab, his body punching. I mean, I don't think Callum was badly hurt in the fight. He took a lot on his gloves and his arm. I mean, you saw his arm. But it looked to me that he was incredibly heavy-handed, Canelo Alvarez, from where I was sitting. I mean, I was lucky enough to be in the corral tonight, and you know, his movement. Callum said he's so difficult to hit clean. You know, it doesn't matter if it's a jab or if it's a left hook. He rides the punches so well. He's always using his feet for pressure, and you know, you saw the best 168 pounder in the world tonight, you know, lose pretty much every round to a guy who, you know, has come up from the divisions from welterweight, and it's going to take something, you know, a bit like with Lomachenko, where he had to almost go to a weight class really to get beat. You know, he's a featherweight, super featherweight, and with Canelo Alvarez, you know, he's a welterweight, probably a light middleweight who went to middle. Now he goes to super middle. You know, he could make 160, but you know, he has to take the big challenges. And you know, I saw some names like Bivol and Beterbiev, and you know, you'd have to go out completely outside of your weight class and comfort zone to beat Canelo Alvarez. You know, I mean, you saw the Golovkin, 2 tremendous fights, very, very close. Can Golovkin do that again? Can the movement of Billy Joe Saunders cause him enough problems? But you've got to hit him hard to keep him off. You know, Callum punches hard, but couldn't put a dent in him, really, at any time. And unfortunately, when you've got a fighter as good as that, who has a chin like that, makes it very difficult.
Callum's not in the dressing room. Did he specify really what was wrong with his arm? He mentioned it in the ring, but he didn't really describe it all that much.
I saw it, I think, in the 11th round, because Canelo started looking at it and he was like pointing at it in the fight, because it was getting bigger and bigger. It's not diagnosed yet. Some people in the changing room think he might have broke his arm. And it would make sense, because he took a lot on it. I think it looks like a detached bicep or a tricep. I mean, he has a lump out the side of his arm, like, very strange. The doctor said it's a torn bicep or tricep, and he's going to have to get scanned when he gets home, but he's clear to fly.
It happened how early in the fight did he say?
I think as early as the 2nd or 3rd round, but he's not, you know, he didn't for 1 second say, oh, I couldn't do this or I couldn't do that. I think it just got progressively worse, and the more shots he was taking on it, I think the more, you know, problems it was causing him. But you know, he never finished the fight and said, oh, I couldn't do this or I couldn't do that. I think he's a very humble guy, and he just, you know, he held his hands up and said Canelo's too good.
His dad too?
Oh, great.
But Eddie, what makes Canelo so special from your perspective? There's a lot of amazing fighters in history currently. What do you see in him that makes him different?
As a fighter, I think the communication he has with Eddie Reynoso is quite special. I think when you have trust like that in your trainer, I think that's a very special gift, and I think that's a big string to your bow. I think his jab is spectacular. I think his movement is phenomenal. I think his shot selection is great. I think he has tremendous power. I think he has an incredible chin. I think he's really tough. And like great athletes, especially fighters, when you make that kind of money, yet you still have the desire to work as hard as you did when you first walked in the gym, and you still want to prove yourself, and you still want to take challenges, that's called being in love with the sport of boxing, and that makes you really dangerous. If you can stay at the top of the sport and not be doing it for the money, and you're as good as that, you can't be beaten. The minute you start falling out of love with it, the minute you start thinking about the money, the minute you're only doing it now because there's a huge payday, you become beatable. And I see similarities in the mindset between him and Joshua, because when I go back to the change room after the fight, all they're doing is talking about the fight and what happened in this round and how they improved, and did you see it when I did this? And they're in love with the sport, you know, and they're both incredibly well fit, and it's a blessing they have, and it's called competitors. That's what they are. They love to win. They're winners, and they're very difficult to beat when you still have that desire, because you should get softer, shouldn't you?
Yeah.
You know, you should all of a sudden say, I don't need to hang in there when it gets tough anymore. But they love it, and they're pure fights.
Thank you.
Eddie, can you talk about Gallo Sonata and Chocolatito? That fight was announced today. Where would that fight take place?
So that fight, you have to have fans for that fight. You have to. So we were lucky to have 12,000 in here tonight.
We're seeing, you know, a lot of guys stepping up right now. Teofimo Lopez stepped up against Lomachenko, Ryan Garcia. You have in 2 weeks against Luke Campbell. What's the deal with Devin Haney? Are we going to see a big fight for him right out of the gate next?
Yeah, I mean, look, the fight between Luke Campbell and Ryan Garcia is a final eliminator for Devin Haney's WBC world title. So, I mean, I really have to respect Ryan Garcia for taking that fight, but if you're going to fight a final eliminator, you should really fight the champion after. You know, I don't see the point in fighting a guy like Luke Campbell, who's a very good fighter, for the interim title and the mandatory position if you're not going to fight the champion. So I believe, and having spoken to Golden Boy and DAZN, that if if Ryan Garcia wins that fight, he will fight Devin Haney next in April. I believe Luke Campbell wins that fight, and he will fight Devin Haney next in April. So for Devin Haney, I think it's really straightforward right now. It's the winner of January the 2nd. And they're both big fights. We all know Ryan Garcia against Devin Haney in the Staples Centre is a monstrous fight, my favourite word at the moment. But also I'd like to see Devin Haney against Teofimo. These I just call them kids. These kids are great because they really will fight anyone. Like Teofimo would fight anyone. Devin Haney would fight anyone. Ryan Garcia would fight anyone. Tank Davis would fight anyone. We've just got to make sure we actually do the fight. So I don't mind which two are paired up of any of those four, as long as we see a few of them next year.
And I know you have more talks coming, right, for Joshua and Fury, probably what, Monday or tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean they've been ongoing non-stop. I mean the next move is, you know, really the drafting of agreements, which is going on right now. You know, there's a lot of work to do on that, but only minor points really, in my opinion, to resolve. So I think you'll see over the next few weeks, hopefully us getting into that position where we can then go out into the marketplace and start to look at where that fight might take place. But again, as I've said before, no one is looking at any other fight from both teams other than that one.
So, you know, you already had the financial split agreed to. You say there's only minor points to resolve. So you basically have a verbal?
Yes. I mean, we have a verbal outside of, you know, I'll tell you, where the fight's going to take place and how much money can be generated, but obviously there's a split for that. The TV platforms, you know, we know AJ's got an exclusive deal with Sky, Fury's got matching rights with BT. In America, Fury's exclusive with ESPN. AJ's got matching rights with DAZN. Minor, again, you know, and then the silly stuff. Who walks first? Who gets the best changing room?
Silly, but it's held up ice before.
Yeah, not when it's this big, in my opinion. You know, they're still going to argue. You know, I mean, AJ thinks he's the A side. Fury probably thinks he's the A side.
Who is the A side in your opinion?
Anthony Joshua.
Even removing yourself.
Anthony Joshua. I mean, when you talk about as a global brand and the biggest draw globally in that fight, it's clear. AJ is. He holds 3 of the belts. He's by far the biggest. This is why Tyson Fury couldn't fight in December, and AJ could.
Eddie, is there a date possibly in play, a time frame for that fight yet?
Depends where it could take place. I mean, you know, if it's going to be in the Middle East, Ramadan, I believe, runs till mid-May. So end of May, early June is the target for that fight. You know, if he's going to be in the UK, May, June is great as well. But again, it depends on, the only way that fight can take place in the UK is if you can have 90,000 at Wembley. And even then, the guys are going to be taking 50% of the purse to an offer from another territory. But without a full stadium, which right now, with the UK going into another lockdown over Christmas, who knows? Who knows if we're going to see those kind of numbers, you know, May, June of next year.
Eddie, Ryan O'Hara, The Ring Magazine. Just wanted to get your thoughts on Canelo's victory in regards to that now. He's made history once again. Coming into this fight, Henry Armstrong was the only fighter in history to hold multiple ring world championships at the same time and multiple weight classes, and now Canelo has joined a list of 2 fighters, him and Henry Armstrong. Your thoughts on that?
I just think
of Canelo's career, where do you think he's going to rank among the all-time greats?
I mean, I think that greats and legacy is only built over history. So when you watch a fighter in a current generation, you know, when you were there, as I unfortunately wasn't, but you know, watching Leonard and Hagler and Hearns, did you feel that those guys at the time would go down as icons of the sport? But that happens over time. And Canelo is this generation's Leonard and Hagler and Hearns, and over the period of time, people will respect him even more for what he's achieved. And the fact that, you know, like you said about only 2 men to do that, that's the kind of thing, having only known him for a limited period of time, that seems to be the kind of thing that motivates him. So when people call out names to fight Canelo Alvarez, I think there has to be a narrative to the fight to get him motivated for that fight. And I think maybe that's where the Triple G fight in the past, or maybe even now, whilst he understands it's probably the biggest financial fight for him, what is it? If it's at 168, it's a defence of his world super middleweight titles. You know, if he fought Billy Joe Saunders, he was fighting another champion, trying to pick up another belt. So these are all things that you can ask him, but for me, he's the standout pound for pound at the moment in boxing. He's a modern day great, and as time goes on, that legacy will be established, and he will go down as, like I said, the great of our generation, I think.
Hey Eddie, welcome back to Texas, and Jeff Zimmerman from Fight News.
Yes, Jeff.
Hey, what is your relationship with Al Heyman and the PBC, and is Caleb Plant possibly back on the radar? There was talk about him and Canelo, you know, a few months back.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the beauty of Canelo, I guess, being a free agent, gives him the ability to go and do things like that. I mean, if he was with us, he could do that as well, fight Caleb Plant, but he might not want to be. You know, he might say, I'm going to do my own thing, and Eddie, if you can provide me with a fight against Golovkin or Billy Joe Saunders, great, or if not, I'll go over to Fox and I'll fight Caleb Plant. I believe Caleb Plant's fighting on January the 30th. So he would probably be around for Cinco de Mayo if he won that fight. And I guess if Canelo goes down the route of trying to be undisputed at 168, they're the 2 guys that he has to try and beat. So my relationship with Al Heyman is great. It all depends on really moving forward with Canelo. If you know, if I was a member of the team to negotiate that fight, or he might be quite happy just to do it on his own. So I think what he's doing is quite smart when you're draw of Canelo Alvarez. It's a very risky model, not having a long-term deal and not having that security, but when you want to rise to challenges and sometimes rule out the politics of networks and other promoters, it does give you the freedom to take the fights you want to take.
Eddie, what's your thoughts on all the PBC guys like Plant, Charlo, Benavidez, Spence wanting to fight Canelo?
I think some of them are big fights. I mean, I think the Benavidez fight would be a big fight for obvious reasons. I don't think Canelo against Caleb Plant is that big here, and you know, the Saunders fight is probably the same size in the US, maybe bigger in the US, but it has a bigger global appeal, particularly in the UK, which is of interest to the broadcasters. I just want to see. I think one of the beauties about any deal with DAZN, particularly with Canelo, would give him the freedom. I think they would allow, if he wanted to go and take another fight on another platform. I just think that's one of the problems with boxing, is that PBC particularly want to keep things in-house, you know, and you only have to see their graphics. I mean, even Errol Spence called them out about their graphics, not including Terence Crawford in who might be next. I think they put up 4 opponents. I think he's boxed 2 of them already. You know, so you have to understand that boxing is about facing the best. Doesn't matter which promotional company they're with. Obviously, it's easier to make in-house fights, but you know, everybody looks at Canelo Alvarez as the money fight. You know, there's not a fighter in 160 pounds or 168 pounds that isn't saying, "Oh, I hope I get the call next," because it's your shot at greatness, and it's a pot of money. So everybody is in the hat.
Who's the hardest fight for Canelo in your opinion?
At 168. Well, I think if you look at the 2 Gennady Golovkin fights, you know, they're probably the toughest fights of Canelo's career so far. So I think that's a big challenge for him. I think Billy Joe Saunders is a tough fight. You know, if Billy Joe Saunders can get in the groove that we saw him in against David Lemieux, which was a fantastic performance, the groove that he was in against Andy Lee when he beat him, And it's going to take a challenge like that to bring the best out of Billy Joe Saunders. Listen, he may be unbeatable. He may be unbeatable. Like I said, you may have to go to 175 or maybe even bridge a weight, you know, to get beat.
Eddie, Edgar Berlanga tweeted out that he would have knocked out Callum Smith in the 6th round. He's got 16 first-round knockouts. What do you think about that tweet?
I mean, I think Edgar Berlanga's opposition is absolutely horrendous, to be honest with you. I mean, Edgar Berlanga may well be able to fight. He certainly carries power. But I think I was having a row with Coppinger the other day about it. I mean, the last guy he boxed was supposed to be durable, he just threw himself on the floor. I mean, maybe it was because of Berlanga's heavy hands. But my good friend Keith Connolly, who is Edgar Berlanga's manager, I said, you know, when are we going to see a step up? 16 first-round knockouts. I mean, you should be ready to fight for a world title after 16 fights. He's not boxed anyone in the top 40 of the world. So I think Edgar Berlanga, if he's going to show that he is a big threat in the division, needs to start fighting guys in the top 15. And by the way, I think he can really fight, and I think he's incredibly exciting. But we can't get too excited when he's facing the level of opposition he is.
I have a very important question for you.
Oh dear.
So, production was awesome, great event. What in the world was that with the virtual Michael Buffer? That was so creepy, and then we also had David Diamante too.
So this is what happened, right? Michael Buffer was doing the ring walk virtually. It was all going okay. And then after Let's Get Ready to Rumble, when we got to the stage of introducing the fighters, the production didn't pipe it into the arena. So on TV, it was fine. You heard Michael Buffer actually intro the fighters. But in the arena, it was just quiet. So after 30 seconds, I just said, this is ridiculous. So I told David to get up, and he had to get into the ring. And then he announced it. So it worked in the arena, and it might have worked at home. I actually thought it was a bad idea. I just said we were just having a friendly joke with the zone. They actually quite liked it, but because it kind of worked in a weird way that on TV you heard Buffer, and in the arena you heard Diamante, but seamless it wasn't.
If the zone quite liked it, then they have bigger problems.
Yeah, I think it come across okay on TV, but for me,
it was creepy.
Yeah, you're quite creepy sometimes.
Eddie, Mark Castro, for pro debut.
Yeah.
Usually pro debut, there's not a soul in there.
Yeah.
He's co-main, didn't show no fear when he got the knockout. What did you think of how he handled it?
I think it was a big occasion for him. I mean, I changed his position. He was going to be the first TV fight. And when he showed me his outfit, I said, I'm going to actually put you just before the main event. And I think nerves got the better of him in the opening round or two, to be honest with you. I mean, he's a very confident kid. He might not admit that, but he did, you know, he didn't look very composed in the first round or two. When he started to settle down, when he started to, you know, set his feet, he's very, very good. Very, very good. But there's a lot more to come from Mark Castro, and there's a lot more to come from all our kids. I think Raymond Ford is a fantastic young talent. I mean, you see the benefit of sparring with the guys like Teofimo Lopez and Shakur Stevenson, and Ammo Williams is so exciting. You know, he's very, very heavy-handed. So Mark Castro is going to be a big star. I mean, there's a lot of people say he looks like Elon Musk. You know, and I saw that, yeah, young Elon Musk. So hopefully he ends up making the same kind of money.
How does he end up as a pro debut, co-main event? I mean, aside of the fact that he did great on the fight, but...
I just think that, obviously, we were very challenged in this show financially, with no gate, or not the kind of gate that you'd expect for a normal Canelo Alvarez fight. So unfortunately, we didn't have the budget for, you know, a show at MGM that generates another, I don't know, 7 million on the gate. So we saw Frank Sanchez and we saw some good fights, and I just felt that if we're going to invest in these young kids, this is the kind of platform that you need to give them the opportunity to do something different on. So a lot of people put fighters, young fighters out early, like Ellie said, with no one in the crowd. And I get a buzz out of watching a young man like that go out in front of 12,000 people. And like I said, I think he had jelly legs for the first round. So I wanted just to give him the chance and the platform that maybe others couldn't have got. And if we're going to build a star, that was the perfect way to get him off the starting line tonight.
Excuse me. Omar Perez Campos from Guadalajara. We know Canelo and Canelo team wants to fight in his city, but so big fights like Saunders or Golovkin are possible in Mexico or just in another country?
I think the only way that can happen is if there's investment from the government, because I don't believe the gate financially would generate the kind of money that you need to make a fight like that. So does that mean that maybe a smaller fight comes to Guadalajara, like a Yildirim fight or something, you know, in the interim? Again, my relationship with them has been quite brief, so I don't know the full mindset, but I do get the feeling that they would like to do something quickly in Guadalajara. And, you know, for me, that's the kind of thing that goes down in history. Now, when you talk about legacy, doing something in his home city would be amazing, would be incredibly special. So I think that that's really the next step for him, is to take challenges, not just in the ring, but out of the ring. You know, and that would include Europe or, you know, Tokyo, Guadalajara. So that's another question for him. You know, if he turned around to me and said, I'd like your help to do a show in Guadalajara, I mean, well, I'd go there tomorrow.
So, in your ideal plan for Canelo, which fight do you want to make it happen first, the Billy Joe Saunders or the Golovkin fight?
I think the Golovkin fight is the bigger fight globally. You know, bigger fight for DAZN. But you know, at the same time, I want to give Billy Joe Saunders a big fight. You know, he had that fight. We agreed that fight with Golden Boy. He actually flew out to Las Vegas to get ready and start training, and we were one day away from the announcement of that fight. So it kind of feels like a little bit of unfinished business there. Again, I think that's, you know, money doesn't seem to be the single motivator for Canelo Alvarez. I think he wants to fight the champions, and, you know, but for me, the next fight in May anyway should be Billy Joe Saunders or Triple G. Anthony, do you have any updates?
I was going to ask you if you would come.
Yeah, I will go and get it. All right, give me 2 minutes.
Thank you.